started with a sound that didn't belong there. The sharp crack of metal posts being driven into the soil echoed through the quiet morning, cutting through birdsong like a warning shot. Mark froze on his back porch, coffee halfway to his lips, staring across the dew-soaked grass of the land his family had owned for 3 generations. Bright orange stakes stood where open ground had always been, and between them, a man in a neon vest was stretching wire as if he'd done this 100 times before. At first, Mark assumed there had been a mistake. Mistakes happened. People misread maps. Contractors showed up at the wrong address. He told himself that as he walked closer, boots sinking into familiar earth, heart beating just a little faster with every step. Then he saw the fence line. It cut straight across his pasture, clean and confident, like someone had drawn a permanent line through his life without asking permission. "Hey," Mark called out, forcing calm into his voice. "Can I help you?" The worker barely looked up. "You'll have to talk to the owner next door." That's when the back door of the neighboring house swung open. Linda stepped out, sunglasses already on, arms crossed like she'd been waiting for this moment. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was the kind of smile that dared you to argue. "You're on my property," Mark said, gesturing to the stakes. Linda laughed once, short and sharp. "No, I'm not. I had it surveyed." That word landed heavy. Surveyed. Official. Final. Mark's stomach tightened. He knew his boundaries. He'd walked them as a kid, helped his father repair them, buried a dog near the old oak that now stood just inside the new fence line. That oak wasn't hers. It never had been. "I'd like to see that survey," he said. Linda tilted her head. "You'll see it when you need to. For now, the fence is going up." By sunset, the wire was tight, the posts solid, and a third of Mark's land was suddenly unreachable. The gate he used for his tractor was on the wrong side. His cattle paced along the barrier, confused, restless. That night, Mark didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that fence again, slicing through memory and muscle alike. He replayed Linda's confidence, the way she'd said surveyed, like it was a weapon. The next morning, he made calls. County records, old deeds, a retired surveyor his father once trusted. Every answer pointed the same way. If there was a dispute, only one thing mattered. A licensed surveyor, on site, fresh measurements, no shortcuts. When Linda heard about it, she didn't hide her irritation. She stood at the fence line when Mark told her, arms folded tighter than before. "Waste of money," she said. "You're wrong. Then you've got nothing to worry about," Mark replied. For the first time, her smile slipped. The survey day arrived under a hard blue sky. The surveyor, an older man with calm eyes and deliberate movements, unloaded his equipment like a surgeon preparing for a long operation. Linda watched from her porch, phone in hand, clearly recording. Mark said nothing. He didn't need to. Flags went into the ground. Lasers blinked. Numbers were called out and written down. Minutes stretched into hours, each one pulling tighter than the fence wire itself. Finally, the surveyor stopped. He looked at the fence, then at Linda's house, then back at Mark. "Well," he said slowly, "this is interesting." Linda stepped closer. "What do you mean, interesting?" The surveyor tapped a marker into the soil, just inside the fence. "This line is off, by quite a bit." "How much?" Mark asked. The surveyor met his eyes. "Nearly 12 feet. The fence is entirely on your land." The air went dead still. Linda laughed, loud and forced. "That's impossible." The surveyor didn't react. He simply handed over the paperwork. "These measurements are tied to county benchmarks. They don't lie." Linda's phone lowered inch by inch. Her face drained of color as she scanned the page, then scanned it again, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves if she stared long enough. "So what happens now?" Mark asked. The surveyor shrugged. "Legally, the fence needs to be removed. Immediately." Linda's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since Mark had known her, she had nothing to say. But this wasn't over. Not even close. Because fences don't just divide land. They divide people. And Linda wasn't the kind of neighbor who accepted losing quietly. By the next morning, a lawyer's letter was taped to Mark's door, and that's when things really escalated. The letter smelled like ink and arrogance. Mark read it twice, then a third time just to be sure he wasn't missing something. Linda was demanding access to her fence, threatening legal action, and accusing him of harassment for intimidating construction activities. He laughed once, bitter and tired. She'd built a fence on his land. She'd been proven wrong by a licensed professional. And now she was doubling down. Mark did exactly what his father would have done. He stayed calm, kept records, and followed the law to the letter. He hired his own attorney, a quiet woman who listened more than she spoke. "Do nothing without documentation," she told him. "Let her make the mistakes." Linda made them fast. She called the county. She called the police. She told anyone who would listen that Mark was trying to steal her property. Each time, officials showed up, looked at the survey, and left with polite apologies. Each time, Linda grew angrier. One afternoon, Mark came home to find her standing inside his pasture, screaming into her phone, gesturing wildly at the fence like it had betrayed her personally. "You're trespassing," he said calmly. She spun around. "This is my land." Mark held up the survey. "Not anymore. Not ever." That was the moment something snapped. The lawsuit came and went faster than Linda expected. Facts don't bend to tantrums. And the judge didn't have patience for confidence without evidence. The ruling was clear, cold, and final. Fence removal. At Linda's expense. Restoration of the land. Mark stood at the same spot weeks later as the fence came down. Post by post, wire by wire, the scar across his pasture disappeared. The oak tree stood free again, branches swaying like they'd been holding their breath. Linda never came outside. When it was over, Mark walked the boundary one last time, boots tracing the true line, the real line, the one that had always been there whether anyone respected it or not. He didn't feel victory the way movies describe it. There was no cheering, no grand speech, just a deep, quiet relief. Some lessons are expensive, some are humiliating, and some are taught by a man with a tripod and a measuring rod who shows up and lets the truth speak for itself. Linda learned hers too late, and the land, patient as ever, returned to silence. Unchanged, unmoved, and finally, undeniably his.